I trained smarter than ever, but still blew my race. Here's why. Have you ever trained harder than ever for a marathon, nailed the workouts, and felt stronger than ever, only to have your race unravel for something totally preventable? That's exactly what happened in my fifth marathon. And I'm sharing the one key mistake that sabotaged my race so you never make it on your big day. If you think more always means better performance, think again. I had trained smart. I had trained hard coming back from my first ever injury that sidelined me from running for 42 days. And my fitness was peaking. My splits looked great, and every long run gave me more confidence. But none of that mattered when the wheels came off on race day. And it wasn't because I wasn't fit enough. It was one small decision that caught up with me in the final miles. Today, I'm breaking down that one mistake and how you can avoid it so all of your training actually pays off when it counts most. And whether you're chasing a PR in the marathon or just trying to finish strong, this could be the difference between heartbreak and breakthrough. And to provide some context for you for where I am in my marathon journey, just so you can kind of put everything together and see what applies to you in your running journey, I want to kind of share a little backstory on how I got to this point of my fifth marathon. This was race number 82 for me in my 14-year adult onset running journey and my fifth marathon. Marathon number one, Hartford Marathon 2017. I followed the free plan online, made all the rookie mistakes with mileage, recovery, pacing, running my easy runs too fast. And the experience was not very rewarding because I walked slash jogged through painful cramps the last 6 miles, actually more walking. And I didn't know about proper sodium replacement or electrolytes or race strategy. My final time for that first marathon was 4 hours, 15 minutes, and 3 seconds. My second marathon went back to Hartford 5 years later. Yes, it did take me 5 years to go back 4 seconds because that first experience was not pleasant. And I ran with GI cramps, bloating, and needing to use the porta potty 2 times due to severe pre race anxiety. Final time was 4 hours, 3 minutes, and 39 seconds. Marathon number three, the Cape Cod Marathon 2023. This was my breakthrough marathon. I got sub 4 hours and it was a 23-minute PR. So after 12 years into my, adult onset running journey and third marathon, I finally called myself a marathoner. And the fourth marathon was actually part of Disney Dopey challenge. So I did the Disney marathon as part of that 4-day challenge. I had no time goal in mind. I just wanted to have fun. And when I felt so good, I really turned it on, the competitive spirit in the second half of that race, and felt strong. I was super proud and had fun in the most magical place on earth. My final time was 3 hours, 44 minutes, and 30 seconds. So came within 4 minutes of my PR, which I was not expecting whatsoever because I really didn't have any expectations in terms of time for that race. And there was a full 16 months between this fifth marathon that I just ran and my last because I had to defer the Philadelphia Marathon in 2024 after suffering a plantar fascia tear last summer, which I really detailed my 7 lessons learned from not running for 42 days in episode 249 on the Healthy Runner podcast, if you are interested in that. And going into the Steel Rail Marathon, I was patient. I respected the healing process and the progressive return to run plan because I wanted to do it right. And I wanted to build my body back to be stronger than ever so I can not only crush my next marathon, but marathons for decades to come. And I went from months of cross training on an indoor bike and unweighted running on a treadmill, and not being able to run outside, get my mental clearing miles in during the beautiful fall weather that New England has to offer. as I really built back my base mileage and really got up to doing 16-mile long runs in the dead cold winter in the Northeast here. So I was super patient on the comeback. I didn't put a goal race on the calendar in early spring, mid spring. I really waited till late spring to really make sure that I built my body back stronger than ever. So I could do this like for the long run, right? Like I'm not just looking to, bucket list item and get sub 340 in the marathon. And then I feel like I made it to the top of the horizon, right? I made it to the top of the hill. Like I want to continue to improve in this journey, and I want to be able to like get outside and get my mental clearing miles in on a weekly basis. I did, however, suffer a minor setback with an Achilles tendonitis flare up. On the same side, I had my plantar fascia injury, which is very common, by the way. I see that a lot in my athletes that I work with who are struggling with running related injuries. And I really had to kind of reset and focus on managing that injury during a crucial time period to build up safely for this fifth marathon conquest. So this is around January, mid-January time period now when this did happen. My coach and I really, I thought, did like a perfect job, honestly, managing that injury to really take the load down, do more of the unweighted running on the treadmill, and then actually build back the strength in the Achilles, correct any strength deficits on that left side that were still present from my plantar fascia. So I needed to kind of like reset, right? Like, Dwayne, okay, have you addressed everything? And it really came down to the contributing factors of why I wound up tearing the plantar fascia to begin with last year. And that was perfect because it really allowed me to start like a 3.5 month like marathon training block. But I already had like a solid base built up from basically like October to January. Like I said, I was running 16-mile long runs. I was running, 4 days a week. I was up in the 30 miles per week range. So I had a solid base built up, and I really focused on like recovering from the injury during this crucial time period. I follow all the strategies I outline in my ultimate guide to running healthy without Achilles pain, to calm down that for a couple of weeks and really not have to stop running, build back my mileage back up, gradually introduce my speed work again. And I was very grateful to not have any flare ups of that Achilles pain moving forward, which was really key, honestly. And this was the first time I actually trained for a goal race in the springtime because I travel so much from January to May. When last year, I have one daughter in college right now, but last year I had two girls who were doing travel volleyball, and it was literally almost every weekend because they were like in different tournament weekends because there were different age groups. Um, so I've never actually set a goal race for the springtime. First ever marathon I've done in the spring. And this was one that I needed to be flexible because my younger daughter, Gabby, is still doing travel volleyball. And, I either went down to visit Olivia in Florida in college twice, yeah, twice during, actually three times during this training block, or it was her birthday. Then I went down for a random daddy daughter visit, just me and her, and then we had to move her out of college during this whole build. So it was three times, and then travel volleyball. I really love the destination long runs. Very memorable runs for me in DC, Fort Myers, Boston, Atlanta, Philly. I specifically remember a really hot, tough 18-mile long run with Spice in Atlanta in March when my body was definitely not ready for the heat at all. Another memorable run for me was my first 20-miler of this cycle, the week before my half marathon tune-up race, in which I did the final 6 miles at marathon goal pace, which I've never done before in my life. And I was able to hold like an 8 to 8:15 pace for those last 6 miles after running 14 miles at my easy pace. And lastly, I got another huge confidence boost during this training cycle after racing the half marathon untapered and finishing with the same time I did during last year's half marathon when I was quote unquote half marathon training. And this was actually a tougher, hillier course. And, I was able to get the legs turning over for some faster, shorter bouts of spice during my long run the following weekend along the beautiful Schuylkill River in Philadelphia. I really enjoyed that destination run I had actually on Good Friday, and was feeling like I'm back at this point after overcoming the plantar fascia injury. That was a pretty stressful training load for me that I've definitely never done in my life, doing the 20 miler, 6 miles a marathon pace, then racing a half marathon. Then the following weekend, actually getting back into 16-mile long run with some faster elements during the long run. It was easier, faster elements, but still faster elements. So I was feeling like confident that like I've overcome the plantar fascia injury. I've overcome the Achilles flare up that I had back in January. And I was channeling my inner Rocky Balboa, really getting motivated, running around the statue in Philly, because that was the marathon I had to defer last year when I couldn't run. And that is actually the fall marathon that I will be doing this year in 2025. So if you're a runner who's been struggling with injuries, remember, it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. There's a quote, a nice little Rocky quote for you. And that is what I did these past 10 months leading up to this marathon. So going into the race, I was feeling strong, ready. I was in a great place in terms of like mindset, my body, my soul, and to have a great like fifth marathon experience. I actually did during this training block 3 20-mile long runs with marathon paced miles in all of them, with the last one being 9 straight miles at marathon pace. And I was able to finish like strong and nail my paces. And ironically, all 3 20-miler long runs that I did were in the rain. So I joked that I was like sure that I was going to be getting rain on race day. And believe it or not, that's exactly what happened. We coach our athletes all the time that you need to practice training in all race conditions because you never know what the weather will be on race day. And you need to be ready for it. Would I have liked to shift my long run day by one day? Because you know how this works with rain. It's like one day on the weekend, it's like beautiful. The other day, it's like crappy and rainy and dark. And, it's gloomy outside. Like, who really wants to spend 2.5 hours outside in dark and gloomy weather? Like, I would have loved sun. I would have loved blue skies. I would have loved to hear the birds chirping. But that's not what happened. And I knew really what worked best for my schedule in terms of like recovery as well was to keep that long run on the day it was and to just not even let the rain, the gloominess bother me at all. And those soppy, wet long runs really made me mentally stronger. And we talk about mental strength a lot on this show. And I just recently chatted with Jason Fitzgerald about building mental resilience in episode 262 on the Healthy Runner podcast. If you've caught that one, and if you want to learn more strategies on how to do that in training, check out that training. But doing this while you're marathon training is really key. And I think it was critical in really grinding this fifth marathon out for me. So as I kind of headed out of town, I checked into my hotel Friday late afternoon in Pittsfield, Western Massachusetts, in the Berkshires. Um, Relaxed in the hot tub, had a nice, clean, carb-packed dinner on the patio. It was like a beautiful day. It was actually very warm on the Friday and Saturday before the race. High humidity. It was like mid 70s. It was actually really nice. Sit out on a patio. Had this like great Asian restaurant in my hotel. Got some nice little dumplings, white rice, cooked veggies, had some grilled chicken. Unfortunately, the pollen got to my eyes. And I guess that night while sleeping, I was probably rubbing my eyes because they were itchy, wound up rupturing a blood vessel. And that's why my eye looks like the way it does right now. Don't worry. It's totally harmless, not painful whatsoever, not even itchy. It just looks a lot worse than it is. Apparently, Google tells me it's going to heal on its own. Blood will be reabsorbed. Totally harmless. So no need to worry if you were wondering why my eye looked like the way it did. My daughter joked yesterday and said that I looked like a villain. So I'm like, all right, cool. I look like a villain. All right, I'm going to record this recap episode looking like a villain today. So let me know what villain I am in the comments below. Am I Jafar? Let me know. Let me know who I am. And the day before the race, I picked up my bib, went to go do that, drove to different points of the course. I took some photos so I can use those visuals later that day when I was doing my visualization. So I had the visuals of what the course looked like at different points. I knew, okay, at mile 20, right, this is what it's going to look like. Here is where the trail looks like. This was on like a rails to trail system. So a lot of it looked similar, but there were some nice like reservoirs. There were some nice little rivers, water features, I guess, nearby. Not that I was paying attention to that during the race at all, because it was like dark, cloudy, and rainy the day before when I checked it all out. It was a beautiful day. It was blue skies. It just looked so relaxing. You're in the Berkshires. It's like, it was very like peaceful. And I wanted to take those photos so I can like use that in my visualization practice that day. So then when I race the race on race day, it's like I've already raced it in my mind, right? I went through my race strategy. I visualized what it's going to look like, what I'm going to be seeing when the going gets tough, when it's going to get hard. And I ate normal portions of food that I normally eat. I just changed the percentage of carbs a little bit more, as well as taking out high fiber, raw veggies, fruits out of my diet. I didn't do any crazy carbo loading. I felt that I added a morning and afternoon meditation practice was super helpful. I remember doing that for the Cape Cod Marathon. I did that during all of race week, which I think really helped kind of calm my mind and just the stresses of like work and right, like your day and your brain's always going. I did, make it I was really conscious to add in. I always do a short meditation before I go to bed at night, but I was really conscious to either get a morning session in if I woke up with a little like anxious thoughts or like, brain's kind of like, all right, you got this that you have to do today and, your schedule. So I really took the time, which I don't on a daily basis, but I made that a priority. And it really helped. It really does. And I love doing that. And when I can do that, and I need to do a better job of doing that during normal work weeks. And I prepped my flat Dwayne race kit the day before. I felt confident going to bed that I was ready to execute a smart, even or negative split marathon race for the first time ever. That was my goal. That's what I said to my coach. I was like, yes, I do want a PR. And I think my fitness has demonstrated that I can get a PR. And my PR at Cape Cod, I went through in that race recap, if you remember, that there were some crazy headwinds that I was like 20-mile-an-hour headwinds that I was facing during those last like 8 miles of the race. And then I was like alone on my own in like these small neighborhood blocks where no one's even cheering for you at all. It's like really hard to maintain your marathon pace at that stage of the race. So I felt confident that like this one, is going to be my PR. I put the training in. My mind was ready. I was ready to do it. That was my goal, was to like, hey, let's execute a negative split race, or at minimum a positive split marathon, because I know that is going to be the success pathway forward in my marathon journey. So it's not like I was hung up on a specific time. Like, yes, I wanted to PR, but whether I got 3:39, 3:35, 3:30, like that would shock me if I did go that fast. But any of those, like I would have been happy with, right? Um, so that was my goal, like nothing too crazy. And before I share with you how that morning started out and the race started, I do have two quick announcements for you guys. There is a bonus download to this training, our marathon training guide for beginner and advanced runners with longevity in mind. This marathon training guide is designed to cater to both the beginner and advanced runners who are seeking to achieve their marathon goals while prioritizing longevity and minimizing the risk for errors. This resource is filled with our best deep dive trainings that we've done on the principles of marathon mindset, base building, strength training, nutrition for the marathon, gradual progression in terms of marathon training plans, adequate rest and recovery, and well-rounded training that supports long-term like marathon running. And you can click the link that I have for you in the show notes or go to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/marathon. And then also, second announcement, we are now open for marathon specific one-on-one coaching for fall marathon. So whether you're running Chicago, Hartford, New York, Marine Corps, we just got a couple of athletes who signed up for Marine Corps this past week. If you're running Philly, like I am, or your local marathon, like, and you've struggled with nagging injuries every time that you've tried to train for a marathon, or you just can't seem to have that breakthrough marathon performance, then this program is for you. And not only will you get the structured strength and run plan for marathon training to not only crush your marathon goal, but stay healthy and finish the race feeling proud and strong. And if this sounds like the result that you want this fall, you can simply apply for our signature Healthy Runner coaching program before our spots fill up. So like I said, this is kind of our busy season, if you will. This is when, our demand does increase. Our coaches kind of bandwidth is maxed out. So if you really have resonated with any of the messages on the podcast, on the YouTube channel, and you're thinking about coaching and you're just not sure if it's right for you, schedule a free strategy call with me. We'll see if it's a good fit for where you're at in your marathon journey. And we'd love to help guide you to that marathon that you can be proud of. So let's get into waking up race morning. The weather was looking like perfect marathon conditions. I got a little nervous the day before when it was high humidity. However, thunderstorms rolled in that evening because it was so humid. And those thunderstorms, I guess a cold front came through and it dropped the dew point down. So the temperature for race morning was 55 to 58 degrees, cloudy, no sun. Dew point was 48 to 53 degrees. So those are PR conditions, guys. If you're under 55 degrees dew point, like those are PR conditions. Those are amazing conditions. There's so many marathons nowadays that are just hot wherever you are. Like even in cooler places, there are hot marathons. So I was really excited for this. There was a chance of rain that was to start at like 10 p.m. The marathon started at 7:30. So I'm like, all right, it's going to rain during the end of this race. No worries. I had my hat with me. I put it in my vest. I was going to take it out once it started raining, keep the rain out of my eyes. Mentally, I was genuinely excited for the race. I woke up race morning, genuinely excited, not nervous whatsoever, no feelings of anxiety. 2 days leading up to the race, I had some midweek anxiety that was more related to honestly getting all the work I needed to get done before I headed out of town. And there were no signs of what I experienced in marathon number 2 back in 2022. And my goals were to run that negative split, as I mentioned, for the first time, feeling strong at the end and being able to run my marathon goal pace that I've done in training. And I would have been happy, as I mentioned, with anything sub 340. My coach really felt confident and set me up for a race strategy that I would run between a 334 and a 337, which is an average marathon pace of 8:15, just to give you some context here. And I felt confident based upon the training I completed, feeling 100% healthy. This is the healthiest I ever felt during hard marathon training and leading into the race, and being dialed in mentally that I was ready to have the marathon race day that supported my fitness. And this was a very small race, guys. It was on the rails to trail, as I mentioned, with only 149 finishers. So I was able to start per my coach's race strategy plan, conservative, warming up into the race. So mile 1 was an 8:35. Mile 2 was 8:41. I was chatting with a guy who's running his first marathon in 20 years. So yeah, this was like such a small race. You like kind of feel awkward when you pass someone. It's almost like if you're passing someone. I run on a rails to trails here in Connecticut. You pass someone, you like say hi, good morning, something. So this is not all races, when you pass people, you're going to say something, but this one was so small, you felt like awkward if you didn't say anything, right? You almost like feel bad passing someone. So this guy, like I was, about to pass him, and I was like, oh, beautiful weather for a marathon, isn't it? And he's like, yeah, so we started chatting, and I found out he was running his first marathon 20 years with, I hope, I didn't see him at the end. I hope he finished his marathon, completing that and conquering his first one in 20 years. But that one was, I guess, a little slower because I was chatting with him. So it was an 8:41. Third mile, I was also chatting with a very nice lady who was running this race for the second time. And, she was like, looked like she was working a little early on, and we were chatting, and I asked her like what her goal time was, just because I did want to try to find people who'd like be shooting for my pace, because it's always easier in a marathon if you have people to quote unquote work with, right, and are running your pace, where you can chat a little bit, they can keep you honest, right? And I did notice that my in real time GPS was just not working well because of the heavy cloud cover, the mountains. And that happens to me here in Connecticut on really dense, cloudy days, I notice. So I wasn't getting like accurate real time pacing. My lap pace splits were accurate. So that was helpful. But, you really need to like know, okay, am I going at the right pace? That, are my legs turning over at the pace I should be going? So that mile was a little slower as well than I really planned on, but it's all good. Like we're still early. Starting out more conservative is actually better. So that was an 8:41 mile 3. Eight mile 4 was 8:19. So this was at the point where my coach was like, mile 4, let's start to ease into our marathon goal pace of an 8:15. So that was like right on, where I was like, all right, 8:20, good to go. Mile 5, was a little bit slower, 8:25. And again, I think it was really the GPS was all over the place. And I was just, you want to try to not like overcorrect too much or undercorrect. And I was still like really trying to find out what pace I was running. And mile 6, 8:21, I was actually chatting with two dudes and realized I was chatting with them for like a good mile. And I realized, hey, like we're not going at 8:20, so, or 8:15, so I needed to kind of start to pick up my pace a little bit. And I was like, all right, we shared like what our time goals were, and one of the guys was, I think, trying to get like sub 4 hours, and the other one was like running it for fun. And I was like, yeah, I'm going for like sub 3:40. So all right, guys, I'm gonna pick it up a little bit. I'll see you later. And I after those first 6 miles, I hit my goal, which was to go out conservatively. I chatted it up with some other runners. I was able to like relax. I was able to get in a rhythm. My heart rate was in control. So first portion, first third, as we like to talk about it in our marathon race strategy, I like met those goals. Uh, Mile 7, 8:17. Mile 8, 8:16, really locking in on where I should be at this point at my goal marathon pace. Mile 9, saw another runner. He was running ahead of me, very bright shirt. So, can't miss him. And then he was running. He puts his arm up and then he starts walking. And I was like, oh, Galloway runner. And then he was like, oh, no one usually says that name outside of Disney. And I was like, yeah, of course. I was like, Galloway, he's the man. I was like, I had him on the podcast. I was like, have you run Disney before? So then we started chatting, and he's like run every single year. And then he shared with me that he doesn't run this race anymore because of there's like a 3 mile basically like climb. So he doesn't try to like PR on this race anymore. So then that got me like, interesting. I didn't really think the climb was that bad in this course profile. But I kind of chatted with him. So that mile was a little slower, as an 8:25. And then I got back in my rhythm. Mile 10, 8:17. Now the downhill portion of the course started, which I knew was going to be this downhill portion, and it basically goes to the turnaround point and then you come back. So it's like an out and back course. And when you come back, now you got to go to the uphill portion for 3 miles. So I knew the downhill portion, I was going to really conserve energy, meaning I wasn't going to put the brakes on. I wasn't going to try to slow down. I was just going to go on effort for the downhill and then on the uphill. So I expected to run a little faster on the downhill, a little slower on the uphill, which is fine as long as you run on effort and not, try to hit your paces and like force that issue. So as I went into this downhill portion, mile 11, 8:02, mile 12, 8 flat, mile 13, 8:12. So I came through the halfway mark right where I should have been. My coach said, we're shooting for you to go through the halfway mark. I don't want you to be any faster than 1:49 because of our strategy we had set out to run a negative split and have the first half be slower than the last half. And I went through literally right at like 150 flat. So I was like, cool. Like I'm right where I should be right now. Even though GPS was a little wonky, I'm right where I should be. Goal achieved. Everything was right on track. But was it? So this is where we get through halfway through the marathon. I'm feeling good through 13.1 and ready to start climbing for the only elevation portion of this race and this course. So it's a slow climb for 3 miles, but I was ready for the challenge. I had mentally prepared for it, especially after talking with that Galloway runner I met at mile 9, where he said that he stopped trying for the PRs. I knew that 300 feet of elevation gain was like nothing over 3 miles. Like I've trained for this. I've done hillier 18 miler in Atlanta in 70-degree weather when I was used to like 30-degree running in Connecticut. I was planning to run on effort, and I knew I wouldn't hit goals and my watch wouldn't be clicking off at 8:15s. But I was okay with that because I knew that I would feel better after the climb was over and I'd be able to pick it up, right? So that was the whole goal. So the first mile of the incline, I felt strong. This was mile 14. I ran at 8:18. Now this is when the race started to change. Mile 15. And I felt some tightness in my right hamstring, which was a little weird. And it wasn't, I was like, is this like a cramp coming on? And I was a bit surprised and was like, wow, I thought I had taken enough electrolytes pre-run and my liquid fuel flask. So I did a combination of fueling with gels and liquid fuel, which I've practiced in training. And that has allowed me to get more carbs per hour and has been the most carbs that I've gotten during training, during marathon. So, I was like, maybe I didn't like shake it up well enough. And like all my electrolytes are sitting at the bottom of these flasks. And I'm just like straight up drinking carbs without electrolytes. So I wind up pulling out my emergency base electrolyte salt, which are, I've worked well with these in previous marathons for Dopey, for Cape Cod. It's what you literally pop it out, you kind of lick your thumb and it comes on your thumb, and then you lick the salt, which is absorbed sublingually right through your mouth and not have to actually go through your gut. And this has been like a great strategy for me in marathons. I didn't think I'd need to use them. I took them just in case, right? An emergency like this would happen. And because I did pre-fuel the day before, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, my electrolyte, the morning of 1,000 milligrams. In each flask, I had over 1,000 milligrams. So I was like, I'm not going to need to use this, but you know what? Just in case, let's bring it, because you always want to be prepared, right? Just like I've run extra gel just to be prepared in case one exploded on me, I lost one, or whatever happens. So I was like, you know what? This is like a little weird that I'm starting to cramp, but I remember feeling some tightness back in Cape Cod, where there was this minor pull coming on at about, honestly, the same time of the race. And I remember taking a little base electrolyte salt and didn't have any issues at all going forward in that race. So I felt like, hey, it worked then. Why shouldn't it work now? And that's when mile 15, because of the cramps that came on and, having to walk, that was an 8:36 pace. So now I'm running a little bit pissed, if I'm being honest with you, because it really caused me to go slower split time than I was planning for mile 15. I'm like 8:36. Man, now I got to like do a little catch up, Dwayne, right? Like, and so I was like, all right, let's pick up the pace here. I started pulling out actually some of the kind of reeling in strategies that I wasn't expecting to have to use until mile 18 or 20, because now I knew I needed to make up extra time. I needed to pick my pace back up on this next mile. And I just saw someone in front of me who wound up passing me during the time I was walking. And I'm like, I'm going to catch this dude, right? So mile 16, kind of got back on track in 8:18. And guess who's back again? Back again. It's cramps. And yep, it was more cramps. And by this time, I knew that I really wanted more water because I was extremely thirsty. After downing all the salt that I could put my hands on, because I thought that I was just cramping because I needed more electrolytes. Mile 17 split, 8:47. Luckily saw a water stop, got some water. This was the point of the race that I was supposed to be chipping time off and feel good and trying to run 8:10s after mile 17. So I started locking in on runners ahead of me, really, using those mental strategies to pick up the pace. Mile 18, I was able to do that, 8:14. So now I'm getting to like my goal pace. Mile 19, 8:23. Mile 20, 9:23. So this was more cramping, more walking, more painful, like the worst sensation ever. It was mainly my hamstrings that were the muscles cramping. So this cramping felt different than cramping that I had in my first ever marathon in Hartford when I didn't really use any electrolytes and I went out too fast for my race strategy. Where that was like literally all of my leg muscles were like seizing at once, where I was like stiff legged trying to run and then walk. Whereas like calves, hamstrings, quads, it was everything. This was like mainly my hamstrings, which was like super weird and, very, very frustrating. The water stops were about like 2.5 miles apart. And at this point, I was like super frustrated. I knew my race had like fallen apart. Um, However, I still continued to move on. I noticed that at a water stop, mile 21 or mile 20, I was able to run mile 21 without walking as much. I did an 8:16, almost back to my goal pace. So it's like, I always had like this little hope that, oh, this is going to go away, Dwayne. Like these cramps are going to be over. You took enough salt, you drank some water. This is going to go away. And now you can just like click in on 8:15. And because now you've ran slower, like you're going to even have more energy and like, who knows, like go sub 8. Like there were some long runs with Spice that I did that I was doing some of those miles at 7:56, 7:58. So I'm like, I always had like this little hope that it would totally go away. And I was so mentally strong. I've been prepared for this. I did the training. I'm healthy. Like I knew I'd be able to like push myself and be able to like just start passing people and blowing by people. Right. Like I had that hope. And then bam, like another cramp would come and just like totally crush any hope that I had. So it was like this yo-yo effect when you look at my splits. Mile 20 was a 9:23, mile 21, 8:16, mile 22, 8:30, got a little bit slower. Mile 23, 9:10, mile 24, 9:09. And now at this point, like I obviously knew my race was totally blown up and I really had an option. And it did like cross my mind, if I'm being honest with you, like really briefly, just because it was going so awry and I was so confused at why this was happening. And I'm just like running through my head of like, how is this possible? Like I didn't go out too fast. The weather's perfect. It's cool conditions. If anything, I was a little cold. My hands were actually starting to get a little cold at the end because it was raining. And the rain, by the way, it was supposed to start at 10, I mentioned earlier. It started literally 5 minutes into the race. So I started actually with sunglasses that were like more of the ones that are graded. So as the sun came out, just because I wanted to keep all the pollen out of my eyes. And as we already mentioned, and that's kind of like, I don't want it to irritate my eyes. So I was wearing the sunglasses more to like just shield wind and pollen from going in my eyes. But my sunglasses were getting filled with water. So I quickly took out my hat. I was prepared for the weather, threw it on, still used the sunglasses under that, but I had to dry them off, which was good to just like protect the eyes. But I was like just dumbfounded on why this was happening. And it did cross my mind, like, you know what? Like, should I just like stop? Should I just like walk it in? And I was like, F this. Like, I was just honestly pissed at this point. And so I really was like, I think like I was looking at my time and, at this point of a marathon, you're doing marathon math, which isn't very accurate, but I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, I saw like 120 something. And I was like, could I still actually get a PR? Like, it's kind of crazy because I've been like walking. I feel like, all of these times, and I know my splits aren't at my goal pace. So I was like, just F it. Like, you know what? Just this last water stop, I literally had like 3 cups of water and I took the Gatorade that they had and I just like pushed through, like just went into a dark place mentally. Um, I had to stop and walk a couple times, but I was just like pushing through and you know, just running as hard and strong as I could possibly do to like salvage this race. I think about, my coach kind of put in my race plan of, making sure that you just leave it all out on the course, right? And that you owe it to yourself to push yourself. Like you've done the training. And I didn't want to have any regrets like after this race. And so I just plowed through. I was able to actually run the last 2 miles a little bit faster than the previous two. So I did an 8:46 and then an 8:32. And then, that last like sprint to the finish, when you see the finish line, that was like in the low eights. But right when I finished, the time on the clock was actually 3:44:12, which is an 8:34 pace, which was actually by the skim of a couple of seconds there was my second fastest marathon time. So as soon as the race was over, I literally took the water bottles they had. I downed 3 water bottles in 30 minutes, which is quite unusual for me because I think about all other marathons I finished. I do drink water because I know it's important for recovery, but it usually takes me a while to like get that first bottle down, tell you the truth. And then, it takes a while for me to drink 3 bottles of water. So I was just like so confused as to why this happened and truly dumbfounded why I cramped up, because I've completed more training than ever. And I was running a smart strategy and the weather wasn't even hot. As I'm saying this to you, like, do you know the fatal mistake I made? Can you think about it, what it was? After my race, my coach and I were messaging. I also messaged with Brooke, our registered dietitian on our team, who's been on the show many times and confirmed I 100% had a fluid electrolyte imbalance, but not the kind we talk about often on this channel a lot, and the kind that plagued my first marathon attempt with cramps and stiff legs those last 6 miles in Hartford in 2017. I had the opposite scenario in that I took too many electrolytes without sufficient water intake, which can lead to muscle cramps during a marathon. While electrolytes are crucial for maintaining hydration and muscle function, an imbalance, especially an excessive of electrolytes without supporting with enough water, it disrupts the body's fluid balance and increases the risk of cramping. And when you lose fluid through sweat, you also lose electrolytes like sodium, potassium, magnesium. And if you overconsume electrolytes without replacing lost fluids, water, it can lead to this imbalance, which affects the functioning of our muscles. And even like small amounts of dehydration is going to lead to muscle cramps. And the electrolyte imbalance can exacerbate the dehydration, which reduces blood flow to the muscles, leading to less oxygen, nutrients, and further increases the risk of more cramps. So here's the big lesson that I want you to learn from, because I don't want you to repeat my mistake. The moral of the story for you as a marathon runner: electrolytes are important for your fueling strategy. However, they need to be balanced with adequate water intake to prevent muscle cramps during the marathon. The fatal mistake I made is that I didn't have enough plain water for the race, because I thought the fluid carbs that I had in my flasks I was having, and the water that I was having on the course, was enough for me. However, it didn't help that this was a super small race. They were only giving out small Dixie cups that were literally half full. So it was like a tiny little shot of water that I did have. And I did skip 2 water stops in the beginning half of the race, because I was chatting with those fine individuals. And it's kind of like you're chatting. And I was like, I got fluids on me. I'm like, good. I don't need water at this point of the race. And that was definitely a fatal mistake that I made. Um, and now thinking about it, during all of my long runs, I always practice with 2 flasks of carbs. So I was practicing the fueling strategy, the amount of carbs I was getting in per hour that I had done in training. I was implementing that in the race. That wasn't different. However, I did always take with me a water flask, a handheld. And then when I would finish that, I would fill it up during that workout and have another one. So I basically had like 2 full flasks of water during the long runs I practiced this fueling and electrolyte strategy. So those little Dixie cups were not enough plain water than what my body needed, which led to this imbalance. And, though that I'm super disappointed I couldn't have the time on the clock that I know I'm capable of running a marathon, I do feel better knowing why this occurred, and know that I will never make this mistake again. In fact, I was actually having my one-on-one meeting with one of the coaches on our team yesterday, Coach Lou, our marathon expert, and he added that most marathoners don't adjust for weather conditions enough. And this was an example that my fueling and hydration strategy may have been a perfect fit if the weather was what it was on Saturday in the Berkshires, right? Where if it was 70 degrees, humid, then my strategy actually might have been perfect, because I would have lost a lot more electrolytes through sweat because it was a hotter race. But on a cold 55-degree rainy day with humidity that wasn't even present, I was overloading on the electrolytes. So it was like just super frustrating. Can you relate? Like, have you made a blunder like this at a marathon, which you were like, man, maybe you didn't overdo it with electrolytes like I did, but maybe you tried to optimize your marathon performance, and you've been like working at it, you've been learning, you've been growing in your journey for years, maybe even following the podcast and all the information that we provide for you here. And then you do this one thing, and it's that thing that changes your outcome. Uh, it's just super, super frustrating. Let me know if you've ever been there. If you're watching the video version on YouTube, like, drop it in the comments. What like stupid thing did you do, or a thing that you didn't know about, and it really kind of cost you the race that you had hoped to run? Um, the 11 miles of dealing with cramping hamstrings due to this fluid electrolyte imbalance reminds me that the marathon owes us nothing. It takes almost everything to go right for you to have the marathon race you are capable of, and only one thing to go wrong for you to not meet your goals. However, I think that is what I like most about marathon training, marathon running, and why I will continue the pursuit. I will continue the challenge. I like the challenge. That's why I do it. That's why I run races, is to challenge myself, not only to put myself in a competitive environment and race. It's not like I'm looking for like glory days of trying to get back to high school or college days and, being competitive. That's not why I do it. It's just as an adult to challenge myself to do hard things. And part of doing those hard things isn't only the race and like conquering the distance and saying like, I conquered 26.2 bucket list item, check mark. but it's actually improvement, right? And the process of improving and trying to optimize. And it was, if like marathon running was easy, everyone would hit PRs with every race. But because there are so many variables that come into play with the marathon, you got mindset, right? Like I had that one race where pre-race anxiety totally messed up that whole race for me in my second marathon. There's the strength training to stay healthy. Like all of the athletes that we work with in our program, most of them never did strength training before they started working with our team. And now, they're able to hit PRs because they've added in strength training, because they've stayed healthy. They didn't get injured during their marathon training. There's the proper run plan, that you're not running your easy runs too fast, that you're doing enough speed work, the right speed work for what you should be doing, not just what, the random plan on Garmin, or your Nike, app says on your Apple Watch that says you should be doing, track workouts. And that is totally not appropriate for you as a 50 something year old marathon, runner who's trying to complete your first marathon, for instance, right? Good example. The recovery. Like you need to recover. I recovered like a boss after all of those hard long runs that I talked about. I really doubled down on my sleep. I doubled down on my nutrition. I doubled down on all of the strategies that we talk about in our recovery blueprint. The nutrition, right? You need to like optimize that. And I'm going to highlight it, proper fluid and electrolyte balance, Dwayne, right? And you need to actually like execute the perfect race strategy and not go out too fast and not get caught up in the momentum and the hype and how easy it feels for you in the beginning, first 6 miles of the race. And all of that is dependent upon something we can't control, which is the weather. And most of the time is not ideal for us anymore, no matter where you are racing in the United States. It seems to always be hotter than ideal marathon conditions are. And it's not just about the race. It's about the journey. And famous quote, failure is just another way to learn how to do something right. And that's what like brings me joy is, yeah, did I fail for this marathon? Technically, maybe you can call it a failure. I didn't get a PR. I didn't get the time on the clock I know that I was capable of, but I love to view this from the growth mindset lens. And I was able to reflect on this race. And I want to just share with you what I did in that reflection. This is something we encourage all of our athletes to do is reflect after your race, journal this. Think about 4 questions. What went well? What didn't go well? What were you going through? And then what are you most proud of? So I'll share with you my reflection here is what went well. Getting to the start line, 100% healthy. And this is like, I'm sharing this with you because I want to give you ideas of what you can look at and find the things that went well in your marathon, because it pains me. It pains me when someone is down and out, depressed, sad after their marathon because they didn't get the time that they wanted, their goal, right? Like literally that quote unquote sadness. And it's important to feel all the feels, all of that, right? And because you have to go through that. But for me, that was literally like a couple hours. And then I was boom. Like I changed my mindset into growth and curious. Why in the heck did this happen? Right. So, I was curious to find out the why. And so things that went well for me, getting to the start line 100% healthy without any foot Achilles pain for the past 3 months during completing the hardest marathon training runs that I've ever completed in my life at age 45. I finished my 5th marathon and first in 16 months. So this was a long time period now between marathon races, with my second fastest time, despite the limitations and fighting cramps for 11 miles. I finished my first spring marathon, able to modify my training during the busy travel season that I mentioned for you with my girls. The pre-race prep, the week leading up to the race in terms of minimizing stress, prioritizing sleep, following the taper, nailed it. Mental prep and race training strategies, I was genuinely excited for the race. No signs of anxiety at all. Getting not freaking out the moment that the strange cramps started, right? I didn't like panic. And I was problem solving on the spot. I remained calm. I never gave up. Another thing, I never gave up, right? Even when I knew I wouldn't be hitting my A, B, or C time goal. I just owned it. And, to myself, I was able to finish strong as I could and what I had on that day. I never quit. I was running in the rain the whole time. Didn't faze me one bit. It looked like other runners were fazed by it. I wasn't, because I trained in it for all 3 20-milers. The gear, the clothing, the sopping wet weather was all perfect for me. No chafing at all. Squirrel's nut butter, the thing is magic. I slabbed it everywhere. I would, traditionally get chafing, and all over my feet as well. No blisters. My nutrition, my carbs. This was the most fuel I have ever taken during a race with zero GI distress. Before the race, I was able to consume 106 grams of carbs that I finished 2 hours before the race. During the race, I was able to consume, between my gels, between my liquid fuel, 89 grams of carbs per hour, which might seem like a lot to you guys, because most of you are under fueling, but you could train. And I was always someone, if you go back and listen to probably my second race recap at Hartford, I was literally probably having 30 grams of carbs per hour, and I had GI distress. I have a sensitive stomach. So I don't think that's an excuse that you can use, that you can't fuel because you're not hungry, because your stomach gets upset, all that. I trained my gut to be able to run on this because I do it in training. And I eat before my runs, even my easy runs. I eat during the runs. So you can train your gut to ingest this much carbs. Carbs give you spark. And if I didn't have this cramping, I would have had the spark. And I'm confident in that. And I executed the race strategy plan until the wheels came off at mile 15, right? I was right on track. I was smart. I held back. I was able to get into marathon goal pace. I used effort level on the downhill and on the uphill. I was feeling healthy without any injuries during the race. After the race, it's 3 days now after the race, just had some normal muscle soreness, DOMS, after the race. So when you reflect, when you journal this, if you count these up, there was literally 13 things that I just listed that went well. What did I list that did not go well? Number one, too much electrolytes given the cooler weather conditions. Number two, not enough plain water during the race, which caused dehydration. That's literally it. Most of you will perseverate on those two items. But when you journal, when you list the 13 things that went right, it reframes your mindset into growth mindset. And, what was I going through? I didn't really adjust for the cooler weather, didn't drink enough water at the water stops. I really wasn't looking out for this problem. I didn't know this could be a problem. In fact, talking with my coach, she's an ultramarathoner. She says it's quite common in ultramarathoners. They do this all the time. They start cramping, they down more salt, thinking that's going to be the solution. It actually makes it worse. So I was actually making my problem worse when I started downing more salt. But what am I proud of? I'm proud of not quitting. I'm proud of not giving up and just walking the rest of the way. I'm proud of still using the mental tools in my tool belt to continue moving forward when my legs were literally failing, right? Because I needed all those mantras. I needed those fight strategies to keep pushing forward. And I'm proud of running my first marathon since a plantar fascia tear, which I was in a boot. I couldn't run for 6 weeks, right? I'm proud of going through this race experience and learning, which will help me prepare better for the Philadelphia Marathon this coming November, because that's going to be a cool weather race. So now, okay, I've done a marathon in cool weather. Now I know how to adjust. And I'm grateful for this opportunity and feeling healthy before, during, and after this race. And if you have a growth mindset like I do, and you're looking to grow in your marathon journey and want to work with our team of healthy runner coaches to prevent one of the many things that can go wrong on marathon day, then I invite you to apply for our one-on-one signature coaching program. We provide you with structured marathon run plan balanced with strength training for running, and give you the tools for proper mindset, nutrition, recovery, and race strategy, with full support from our healthy runner coaching team and accountability to toe that line, feeling confident to crush your marathon. You can learn more. Simply click the link in the show notes or go to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/coaching. Don't forget, get your free download of our marathon blueprint that you can click the link in the show notes. This was an in-depth recap of my 5th marathon experience. If you are literally still here watching the video on YouTube, hit that like button. Let me know what resonated with you most. I know this is a different type of training that I typically do. I really shared a lot of my personal running journey, which I don't share a whole lot of, throughout the year. So hopefully that resonated with you. But I also tried to put it in the lens of educating, right? And so you can actually better yourself in the marathon. And if you like this training, now you can start to run with stronger strides with my 3 game-changing strength tips for marathon runners by queuing up episode 273 on the Healthy Runner podcast, or just click the video that I have for you next. As always, guys, let's keep growing a strong mind, a strong body, and let's just keep on running marathons. Until next time.